Hello everyone, my name is Jai Joshi and today I am going to give my presentation on literature review on emotion modeling in chatbots, supervised by my professor Ali Reza Menesti. In today's presentation, first of all, I will introduce you with brief idea of chatbots, the problem statement we are trying to achieve, the overview of text classification in chatbots, in which I will discuss some of word representation techniques, deep learning models. Then I will briefly discuss some of literatures, those who have implemented these deep learning architectures for emotion modeling. Then I will provide some of future works, and then I will conclude my presentation. So what are chatbots? A chatbot is an intelligent piece of software which is able to interact with the user and can satisfy a user request. Nowadays, chatbots are widely used as an agent to communicate with users in many of services like booking assistance, customer services, etc. Chatbots recognizing human emotions. So the capability of modeling emotional intelligence with artificial intelligence is of high business value, and with this chatbots can be designed to work as a digital companion with the user with whom they can share their feelings, ask about their personal problems, can mimic a person, etc. Problem statement. The biggest challenge in developing a chatbot is to build a humanizing machine which can increase user engagement. Most of studies underline that emotion is an important factor to consider when developing human related characteristics in chatbots, and most of literatures are trying to incorporate this into industrial chatbots to increase user satisfaction. And this is wide area of research in human computer communication. Hence our main focus is to is on textual agents which can classify emotions from text in chatbots. Word representation techniques. The problem of parsing text in machine learning is algorithms prefer well-defined fixed length inputs and outputs. Also, machine learning algorithms cannot directly work with raw text inputs. The text, first of all, must be converted into numbers, specifically vectors of numbers. And few of techniques are bag of words. Bag of words basically is a simplest way of extracting features from text. So for example, if we have a list of corpus containing words like it was best of times, age, freedom, wisdom, and if we want to create a vector of sentence, it was the best of times, then the vector of this sentence will mark every word inside the sentence with 1, and the remaining word in the corpus will be 0. But the problem in this technique is the bag of words technique disregards the contextual and the sequential information stored inside the sequence. And also for the very large corpus, like millions of words, the vectors of each word or a sentence would have how many zeros, which basically will construct a sparse matrix, and the sparse matrix requires more memory and computational resources which is challenging for machine learning and deep learning algorithms. The other set of technique used is TF-IDF vectorizer, that is term frequency inverse document frequency. This is similar to bag of words, but the idea here is to the benefit here is that they consider the semantic information inside the word and gives more weights to uncommon words inside the corpus. But still, it is not capable to capture sequential information embedded inside the text. And to capture a sequential information, the algorithms widely used are word-to-vec algorithms, and one of them is word embeddings called GLOW vectors, which was developed by scientists at Stanford University. GLOW is basically an unsupervised learning algorithm for obtaining vector representations, and the training of this algorithm is performed on a global word-word co-occurrence statistics from a corpus of Wikipedia, and the resulting vectors represent the interesting linear substructures of word vector space. And the size of vectors of each word can range from 100 to 500, and it can capture synthetic and semantic information inside the word between words. Now, the most common way to create a large set of discriminative numbers is to consider the vector difference between two numbers. So the underlying concept distinguishes man from woman and king from queen. Now this concept and the observation should necessarily be like vector difference between man and woman is similar to king and queen. These properties and other patterns can be visualized in this figure. Feed-forward neural networks. The sample of feed-forward neural networks is as shown in the figure, and the terms X, H, and O basically represents the unit activation levels of inputs, hidden state, and the output. Weights on the connections are represented by W, and each unit in one layer is connected to every other unit in the next layer, and the activation flows from the input layer to hidden and then the output layer, and the knowledge of a network is basically encoded inside the weights. Now the primary question here is what can a multi-layer neural network compute? Practically, neural networks are capable to compute everything, but one disadvantage here is they are considering all the inputs simultaneously inside the network. What if we want to apply inputs differently at different time steps? Then the answer here is recurrent neural networks. For sequential learning tasks, RNNs are more robust. They are useful because we are given an hidden state that encodes all the information at each time step, and at each time step we are allowed to only parse single word inside the cell, and the nonlinear functions allows us to update the hidden state in much more complicated manner. Now at each hidden state, the activations arrive from the previous hidden state cell and the current input of a word at the particular time step. So the activations, the current, the hidden state at time t plus 1 is calculated from hidden state of at time t and the input at time t plus 1. But the problem here is during back propagation, we have to compute derivative of a loss function with respect to weights. Now weights to and from each hidden units are similar, and because of this we need to carry out sum over the sequences and perform matrix repeated matrix multiplication during backpropagation, and this is the reason why RNN suffer from vanishing gradient and exploding gradient problems, and RNNs tend to forget the long-term dependencies. And for this purpose, LSTMs are designed. LSTMs have similar structure to RNNs, but here at each time step T, we have a hidden state and the cell state. Both are of length n, and the cell in a hidden state can compute long-term informations. Now the forgot gate basically controls what information is kept from the previous cell state C. The input gate controls what parts of the new cell contained are returned to the cell. The output gate controls what parts of cell are in the output of the hidden state, and basically all the values range between 0 to 1. Now the LSTM architectures makes it easier for RNN to preserve information over many time steps, because if you see in the value of the derivative, then if the forget gate is set to remember everything, then the information in the cell is preserved for infinite time, and it provides the uninterrupted gradient flow at each time step during backpropagation. And this particular concept is harder to achieve because it's harder for RNN to learn metrics which can preserve information in hidden state. Also in LSTMs, the cell state is changed slowly with minor linear interactions. Hence, it is easy for information to flow. GRUs, gated recurrent units, these are similar to LSTMs, but with a minor update that the forget and the input gate from LSTM is combined into an update gate, which controls what parts of hidden state are updated and what parts are preserved. And it also combines the cell state and the hidden state. Now, GRUs are computationally more efficient than LSTMs because they have less parameters and less complex structures. Encoder-decoder architecture. The encoder unit in the architecture is created by stacking the RNN units, and the output of the encoder is a two-dimensional vector that encapsulates the whole meaning of the input sequence, and the length of the vector in the hidden state depends upon basically the number of cells in the encoder, and decoders are used for language translation also, but they can be designed for the purpose of predictions. Literature review. Now, an LSTM-based approach was studied by a research group at University of Coimbatore in India, and now at, for each literature, I will classify them into the data set collected, word representation technique used, deep learning architectures used, and the model evaluation. So data set used was ICAR data set of emotion. The word representation technique was word embeddings, and they have used three convolution filters on word embedding matrix to create dense representations, and Deep learning architectures used were LSTMs, variants of LSTMs like nested LSTMs, and SVM, support vector machine model. And if you see the LSTM architecture in the figure, the softmax activation function is used for calculating the probabilities of each emotion class, and the model evaluation. Each class, the F1 score for the sadness emotion label is the highest, and the lowest F1 score was achieved for the happiness label. Also, the GRU-based approach was studied by a research group at University of Pennsylvania, and they have basically web scraped the Twitter site for dataset collection using 8 hashtags like anger, anticipation, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, and they have divided dataset into 80% training, 10% validation, and 10% testing. Word representation technique used is glow vectors of 300 dimensions, deep learning model, gated recurrent unit, and they have also evaluated some baseline models. And the model evaluation is shown in the figure, is shown in the table. Now, an encoder decoder architecture was also designed to develop an emotional chat machine which can respond to user text in context of emotional state that is embedded inside the text. So for any given input sequence X and an emotion category E, the main purpose here is to generate a response that is related and in context with the emotion category E. So in the training process, first of all, the post response pairs is fed to an emotion classifier to generate emotion label for each post. And now the data to the encoder decoder consists of post responses and the labels. Each emotion category here is represented by a word vectors, and first of all, during the training process they are initialized with 0 and they are learned over the training period. The encoder converts the entire sequence into the hidden state, and each emotion embedding and the context vector is fed to an decoder which is used to generate the next token. So the concept of internal and external memories are also used. Basically, to express an emotion inside the text, the explicit expression is modeled through selection of emotional or a non-emotional word from an external memory module, and the internal memory is designed to capture emotional dynamics. There is an emotional internal state for each category before the decoding process starts, and at each time step, as the responses are generated, the emotion state decays by a certain amount. Once the decoding is completed, the emotion state should decay to 0, indicating emotion is completely expressed. So for ECM classifier, they have taken dataset of NLP-CC dataset with 24,000 sentences, and to build a classifier, they have used bi-LSTMs. Encoder-decoder architecture consists of GRU units with 256 hidden cells, and the vocabulary size was limited to 40,000. Future works. Now, the biggest concern in developing a chatbot which can identify emotion is a lack of large data set, labeled data set, because most of literatures have whether collected data from social media or manually labeled by crowdsourcing. So The biggest challenge is to have a large corpus of data set, labeled data set, by which we can train a deep neural network, and also not only to identify user emotions, but to develop a context aware bots. Basically, a chatbot should be able to carry out conversation with the user in the context. So if the context and emotion changes, the conversation and responses from the bot should also change. In conclusion, chatbots reacting to end user sentiments have high business values, and for that deep learning architectures are used for classifying emotions from text in chatbots. These are the list of references. Thank you.